Being 5:15, call the Finance Personnel Committee to order. The adoption of the amended agenda.
So move. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Review and discuss the retirement schedule as it compares to the assigned fund balance.
Okay, so once a year, I will go through what our schedule looks like. And what this is this is payouts that have already been earned by employees for years of service working for the city of New London. There was a time where the city did not put funds aside for payments of sick leave and vacation time when employees were to retire. But when we go out to bond, it is a positive for us to have the dollars already set aside. So if our employees were to retire, those funds would be readily available. The chance of that happening is pretty slim and none, but it still looks good that you're thinking of the future and that you have those funds available. So this is what our retirement schedule looks like. And actually, Missy and I came up with this spreadsheet. Missy Kempin, just to clarify. And it lists all of our full-time employees or those eligible for retirement, and not by name, obviously. So the first sheet lists everyone. And then what I did was I broke it down by general employees and then police officers, just so you could see what that looks like. And then I'm going to make this a little bigger. And as you can see, currently in our assigned fund balance, we have $650,000. And if you look at, I want to go up one more. And we're going to go the first one again.
Cash funded liability.
This is cash funded. So at $650,000, and this is hard to see because I can't get it all on one page. We are funded through the year 2027 or very close to that, because that cumulative dollar amount is at $686,000. So you can see that this fund is in actually particularly good shape. The city actually budgets $20,000 in the general fund or for general employees a year and $25,000 for police employees a year for this fund. So it's just to show you that we are adequately putting the dollars aside for this obligation in the future.
And you set that up, Judy, you set up for retirement at 65, 55?
What we assume, the assumptions are on the page. There is a page that actually shows the assumptions right here. So what we assume is that someone is going to retire at full retirement. So we're going to assume that people are going to go out until they would receive their pension at the full dollar amount. So 57 and 30 years for regular employees, and police officers are 52 and 20 years of service. 20 years of service. So we assume that they will not retire until they hit that 20 years. Or that we assume that the other employees will not retire till they hit their 30 years. They can. But we don't actually put them on the schedule as an obligation until the year of which they could retire with a full pension.
And if they go longer, does that benefit the city for this schedule, or is it?
If
for
they,
us?
well, because it maxes out, so you can accumulate X amount of 960 hours of sick leave. And as somebody is here, I'll use myself as an example. I'm way over that amount in sick leave. So yeah, I guess you could say that the city is going to not pay me for some of the hours that I've accumulated. So whether you call that a benefit or not, I'm not really sure, but
Well, I just mean it won't, the numbers won't change if you don't retire at 57. If you wait till you're 65, we're still only obligated for 960, right?
you are
And that's
correct.
What you're putting in there is the max.
Correct. The only thing that changes is the dollar amount if there is a raise from year to year,
Right. But it's not,
just that bump.
but it's still not.
Yep.
And you can't,
Change
like
them
you were
numbers
talking
a
with,
lot.
like you were talking with sick leave, you can't know that that person's gonna have maximum sick leave when he retires. So there's no way you can figure that out, can you?
Me?
Any employee.
No, we have no idea.
So then we'd actually have extra money in there.
Yeah.
which is good,
Correct.
Right.
which is a good
Right,
thing.
exactly. We assume that they're going
That's
to
right.
accumulate full
Yeah.
sick leave.
Yeah.
But if something happens, to someone, they've utilized a lot of their bucket, yes, you're correct. Some people
Yeah.
will not go out with their 960 hours. It also is like a short-term insurance, if you want to look at it that way. So if someone does get sick, they have 960 hours where you wouldn't lose them, or the city would have some time so that they could go take care of themselves and hopefully retain them as an employee. That's the,
If they don't use it, you start drawing in your retirement, plus you get that cash.
you are correct. And the purpose of this always, in all communities are, have payouts, is to try to get employees, once an employee hits a certain age, it's an incentive to have money for health insurance purposes. And as we know, with the cost of health insurance today, if somebody, especially police officers, you're retiring sometimes in your 50s. So this is a gap, a bridge to try to bridge that gap to help them financially pay for health insurance, probably the most expensive, and allow them to retire at a younger age.
I would imagine some of them guys when they retire roll that sick leave over into insurance to cover the gap for their insurance.
They do.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people look at this as their savings account for health insurance so that they get burnt out, a lot of them at that profession. So, they're going in their 50s and it allows them to do that. And as employer, you want people to be able to retire. You don't want them, you don't want them, well, I shouldn't say that, but in some cases, you don't want them here until there's, 70, 80 years old. You want them to be able to jump out and I hope I don't have to be there. Well, who knows?
Because I could hire a team 5 times the work.
So is there any other questions on the retirement schedule or on the sick leave payout schedule?
And Julie, just a point, I don't know if you mentioned this in the beginning part, having this fully funded is a very positive thing for bonding. And
Correct. In fact, I would expect the Governmental Accounting Standards Board at some point, they do look at other government obligations and make the city book them as obligations within our financials. This is one they haven't to date, but I can guarantee you at some point, they're going to look at these numbers that people have in their spreadsheets about obligations for sick leave payout in the future. And it'll be a GASB change at some point. So we're a non-taxable entity, but, oh, you mean when we get it? Oh, you bet that, yeah, this is taxed. This is tax dollars.
Bigger cities, that number is going to be a lot bigger. If they don't have it funded, what happens when they retire?
Exactly. And it is a positive when we go out to bonding to try to, maintain the positive bonding rating that we already have. This is just another avenue for us to point to. And I always talk about this when we go for bond rating and let them know that we are fully funded when it comes to our sick leave, and some of this could be vacation payouts when our employees retire, all the way up to 2027, actually.
All right, moving on to number 3, review and approve the proposed CSM boundaries for the riverfront property. Chad?
So let me get back to the top here. In your packet, you will find a draft CSM that's actually going to be going to the Planning Commission for approval. But the reason why I wanted to bring it to a committee to get to council is just to make sure that ultimately the council is nodding their head on what we're proposing to sell in the downtown riverfront property to SC Swiderski. So we're modifying the CSM to basically get to a point where this is the boundary that we are planning on selling to SC Swiderski for their riverfront development. I'll bring it up on a map that you guys can see it here. So if you can visualize this line right here, this is the parcel, and we're going to stop at Smith Street and come up straight through here. So you can kind of see that by the draft CSM. Originally, if it works, if I click on here, you can kind of see what the parcel is today. And what we want to do, number one, is we want to retain Smith Street as a public right of way. So you can kind of see that this would bring this back and dedicate this to the public as a right of way, as South Water Street right here is currently right of way. And then it would separate what's called Lot 2 on this CSM. Oops. And then it would separate this is Lot 2. So what we're doing is just going to be selling this as the riverfront development, but then we'll have Lot 2, which is on the CSM. And then we also own the building where Longevity is, Lot 203 and Lot 205. We currently own, the city currently owns that. So that could be another development above and beyond what we're going to sell for the riverfront residential multifamily development. So I want to make sure that the council understands that we're splitting the CSM, splitting the lot off, and this is what we're going to be planning on selling to SC Swiderski down the road.
What's happening by, sort of, well, I'm gonna say Saputo, but not Saputo.
Hilker
That
Trucking,
road.
same thing, good point. I'm glad you said that. This currently is not dedicated right away, and the road from that intersection of Wolf River and Wyman Street currently is not right of way. Today, half of the road actually belongs to this lot and half of the road belongs to Hilker Trucking. You can kind of see that. I'll bring up the parcel line actually just bisects that roadway. Whereas you can kind of see what typically a right of way looks like, split here. So I've talked to Tom Hilker about that after some, going back and forth and talking about the benefits and things like that. He has agreed to basically split off his side of the roadway to be right of way. So eventually what we'll do is we'll get this to be roadway again. SC Swiderski had concerns about if this wasn't technically right of way, roadway, that their proposed driveway is going to come out of here. And they were concerned just for future that technically Hilker could shut that off at any time and not let anybody drive on it. And then all of a sudden the residents here might have an issue, with access. Obviously they'll have access on this side, but they requested that this turn back into right of way. So it just ensures access to the development. So I've been talking to Tom Hilker about that and we're looking to do that. So you can kind of see here, it says dedicated to the public for right of way services as well.
I was curious because I was wondering whether they were, if Soderski bought it, if they would move over there about where the sidewalk goes along or the hiking trail goes there, whether they were going to make that into their, say, joining to the roadway.
What we've talked about, oops, let me bring it up.
On the other one, you could see it pretty good there with the trail.
Yeah, actually, we'll have a proposed trail easement. So that will retain as a public trail with an easement. So if you can kind of visualize, the trail's right here right now, and that would retain there because a lot of people use that. A lot of people use that to get to the river. So we want to keep that as public access. So it'll be on private property, similar to behind the water supper club. It's on private property, but it's a trail easement.
I know there's trees planted along between the, say, the road and the hiking trail. There's maple trees, little small maple trees planted along there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I didn't put in there that it's an easement for maple trees. I mean, hopefully that's just a good buffer for the reason why we planted those when we did was we envisioned creating a buffer in between whatever the development was and Saputo at the time.
Yeah.
So as, I'm sure they'd want those to continue to grow to just be a nice buffer between
Yeah.
that and the
Yeah.
plant or the warehouse today. And as you can see, we actually will retain the lot that's got the existing trail on it as well. And that's actually already surveyed out, or it's a lot by itself. So we would retain this as the city's access or city's assets as well. So, but I just want to kind of bring it to you guys and make sure that I don't want to get too far down the road and create developers agreements and everybody on board with this, and all of a sudden the council has a different vision about what we're selling. So I want to be upfront, make sure you guys are good with this in the beginning stages.
Looks good to me.
Need a motion then to approve the CSM boundaries for the riverfront property as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chad.
Mhm.
Number 4, consider it with the Department of Administration approval shifting CDGB CLPL 21-14 funds to CDBG CLPL 2115 roadway mill and overlay. Chad, Judy, or who's taking this one?
Yep, I can take this one too. Most of you, all of you guys were at Public Works the other night, right? What Public Works when we talked about?
I wasn't.
Okay, so as a quick summary, we applied for those CDGB funds. We split them up into a street grant and a park grant. So we had $83,000 for the park ADA improvement grants, and the rest remaining was going to the street grant. In hindsight, finding out all the requirements that CDGB requires with higher end engineering for the hoops we gotta jump through. And I mentioned that the Board of Public Works, just with all the grant administration that needs to be done, my recommendation is to contract out that grant administration. There's a lot of stuff. And we're short-staffed, and I think we're gonna get really biting off more than we can chew if we try to do all that in-house. In hindsight, because we split it into 2 grants, we actually have to do double the grant paperwork because it's 2 grants, so you gotta do all the paperwork. And since we split off just enough, that 83,000, just for the improvements to the parks, it ended up being that the grant administration and the engineering needed for that was gonna be like half the cost of the grant, which 50% of for engineering and grant administration, that's a lot when you're comparing to that. So it's just because we split off enough to what we needed, you know, it just doesn't make sense. It's like trying to do a grant for $10, but then you got all this requirements. So we contacted the Department of Administration to try to save money and say, well, instead of trying to do grant administration for 2 grants, does it make more sense if we shift the $83,000 over to the street to do it over here and do 1 grant administration application or process? So we contacted the Department of Administration on Monday. We did not have an answer yet. I sent out an email on Monday. I didn't hear anything about it. Judy sent out the email today and she gets the gold star because she got them to respond, and they did respond saying we can do that. So with that said, my recommendation is to shift the funds from the park grant of $83,000 into the street grant. They said we can do it. What we need to do is that they need a letter from our chief elected officer, which will be the mayor. A letter requesting that we move the funds from the ADA park project to the street project and request cancellation of the ADA park project with an explanation of why the city would not like to proceed at this time. And it's basically because all that requirements and doubling up the money and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask the committee to consider authorizing the mayor to send a letter to the Department of Administration requesting to move the full $83,000 fund amount from the Community Development Park /ADA grant into the CDGB street grant and to close the CDGB Park ADA improvement grant. This committee needs to approve that and send that to council to authorize the mayor to do that. And I'll draft that letter for you.
And just a clarification on the ADA project. That is not off the table. We are still going to do that. What this shifting allows us to do is save $40,000 in administrative fees. So instead of spending 83 minus 40 on that ADA project, we can put $83,000 into that ADA project. What we'll do is we'll shift funding, since we're gonna move this funding over to the street project back here. I'm gonna look at the street funding that I showed you folks, I don't remember, a couple months ago. And I'm gonna find a revenue source within there that we were gonna use for back here, and I'm gonna shift that over to the park project, because we are not going to do that ADA project. The state and the federal government is on communities to continue moving forward with their ADA projects within their communities. And we need to get these done so that if someone comes in here and says, what have you done to comply within the last X amount of years, we have things that we can point to and say we've been moving forward.
So basically, we'll be doing that ADA on our own dime
Correct.
and shifting the funds so we can maximize our funds on the CDBG grant.
And we're minimizing the grant administration, instead of
Right.
doing it twice.
Right.
Let's do it once, which makes total sense.
One thing that doesn't make sense to me is the Parks project was like a grant for 80,000, but it was $40,000 worth of administrative,
Right.
where the street project was like 12 to 24,000 of administrative costs for 400,000.
When you say the 40,000, that's for engineering and grant administration. What you're seeing with the 24,000 is just grant administration for the street. I don't know, I got the number on my desk, but that's not including the engineering part of that. So if you looked at.
Both of
the-
them, I believe, were close to 40. So what we,
Well, both of them were close to the 24 just for grant administration. But there's higher end engineering that has to be done with the park projects. So I was adding up the engineering and the grant administration together. Whereas if you say $24,000 for the street grant administration, that's not including the engineering that we gotta do. We gotta do that anyway. We gotta bid it out. So I could find out what that is and say, hey, it's 50,000 here. It's 60,000 here, to give you an apples to apples if you want. That makes sense.
right, and when you're looking at it, I guess you could not look at it as a percentage of the project itself too. So if you look at 24 versus 83 and 24 versus, we actually plan on putting, I think close to $1 million back here. So if you look at the fees versus what you're gonna get out of it in a project, that's what we were trying to, think through and try to maximize those dollars, exactly as the mayor was talking about.
So
Um,
the McMahon or whatever, they were gonna charge 12 to 24,000 on each of those projects.
For grant administration only.
Right.
Yep,
And
yep,
so
yep.
now we're gonna pull it together and it'll just be 12 to 24 flat.
Right.
It won't be any going up any.
Yep, so we'll have one grant administration for the streets, for the parks. There's obviously the engineering that, factored into that.
That's why I was confused, because I was like, why is that number so
Yes.
much higher?
Yep,
So,
they're not quite apples to apples right there,
Okay.
but
All right, then maybe you want to read that one more time, Chad, what they need.
absolutely.
And then we can
Thank
make a
you.
motion.
Yep, so I'm
Did you already?
No, I said I wait and let him read it.
Okay,
asking the committee to consider authorizing the mayor to send a letter to the Department of Administration requesting to move the full $83,000 fund amount from the CDGB Park/ADA grant into the CDGB Street grant and to close the CDGB Park ADA Improvement Grant.
I would make that motion.
second.
All right, motion's been made. I'm not gonna repeat it. Been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Finance Director, monthly reports. Judy?
all right. We will start with the revenues. We are in October, or through October is what I should say. On the revenue report. A number of very large items actually come in November, including tax equivalents right here. Jay actually presented that to council in November, so that one will be added in November right here. And then our shared revenue we've actually received in November, but because we're always 1 month arrear, those are not showing up at this time, but I can tell you, I do not anticipate any of our revenues not to come to full budgeted dollars at this point. So everything is looking great on our revenue side. And I would just entertain any questions if anyone has any questions on these. And we will move into the expenditure side. And as far as months, if you look at the expenditures and the number of months that have passed, we should be at approximately 83.33%. And when we look at the budget, we're in total at 78.74%. So on the and the ones that are actually over the equipment replacement, which is a negative 157, we have designated funds that we put aside to make that dollar amount whole. The only one I anticipate to be over budget is this equipment maintenance. So I will do an adjustment to that one at year end. But in total, I do not anticipate us to spend any more dollars in the year 2021 unless something extraordinary happens in the next 20 days. I do not expect the 2021 budget to go over, except in that line item category, and we'll have enough funds in other areas that we can cover that. Does anyone have any questions on any particular line item? It is looking very healthy at this time. I know insurance is at 92, but we always pay that ahead. There is no more insurance to be paid. We actually have a dividend coming, so we'll see that number actually go down. So at this point, like I said, I don't anticipate any overage except that one line item in maintenance. And I'll talk about later on what that means also and when we look at some other things. Assigned and unassigned fund balance. There was one change on here. I think I got the information on the boat docks. So I updated that on the boat launch right here. So $134,000 was spent on 3 replacement docks and the ADA kayak launch, leaving an estimated year-end balance of $35.36. Now, there was just a sale of the floating docks, and that dollar amount is not included in this revenue amount. So I will update that also once we know what that looks like. So that will go right back into this designated fund area. And then the designated funds I was talking about, the retirement reserve are right here. And that's the 350,000 I was talking about when I presented that retirement information, the first item we talked about tonight. But otherwise, nothing has changed on our designated or assigned or unassigned fund balance. Any questions on any of those? Then we'll move on to wheel tax. We have actually collected 103,000 as of October 31st. Shawano Street probably still has another bill coming in, but that's at 62. So we currently have revenue sitting in here of $40,000. And then I have a list of potential projects for the room tax listed there. Spur Road, Shawano Street, we're working on right now. Some for back here on Avon, Lima, and Lyons. And then the North Water Street Bridge. And then these are projects that have actually been completed with wheel tax dollars. Any questions on that? All right, then we're going to go into our bonding. We took out this bond in 2020, and these are the projects that we earmarked for this bonding. All of them are complete except Warner Allen. Are we still getting some bills from them, Chad?
Yep, there's one bill that'll be in this next month, and then there's gonna be one retention one. There's a couple of things they gotta do yet.
Okay.
So there's several $1,000s waiting on retention.
Okay. And then the library roof replacement project is waiting for the tiles, the tile roof that we can't get the supply for to do that project. I know they're having some issues over there, so we'll probably have to address that at some point here, do something to get us until we can get those tiles replaced. You hate to put regular, shingles on there when everything else looks so different. I think it would look kind of funny. And then the Newton Blackmore Trail is something that's being worked on yet. So those 3 projects, everything else is complete on the list. So the police department toilets and sinks, the cabinets over there, Warner Allen, no, I just said that wasn't the roof project at City Hall, the police department. And then what I did, and I've been talking about this, is we took out the state trust fund loan. I moved the City Hall roof replacement down here along with the North Fire Bays, because those are not eligible for this kind of funding. And then we talked about the library project being part of this. So the remaining balance on there is $130,000. And that is our 2 bondings we currently have out, and then all of the information with that. And then to review the 2021 taxes. Maybe I have to go back up to the top. Oh, here we go. So I just wanted to review the tax rate comparisons. I don't know if any of you have gotten your tax bill in the mail. But they did go out. Outagamie went out last Friday, and Wapaka went in the mail yesterday. We do have, if anyone asks you, we have copies of everything here at City Hall. We'd be glad to make someone a copy if they are looking for one and they haven't received theirs. So what this does is it compares on top here, the first one before the bold black line right here. The top is the city itself. The city went up 92.84 on Outagamie side and 85.44 per $200,000 home on the Wapaka County side. But when you look at your tax bill in all jurisdictions, the Outagamie portion of the city went up $5, and the Wapaka portion of the city went down $21.99. Our lottery credit was increased from 136 to 177, and the first dollar credit went down by $5 or almost $6. So between the 2 of them, it saw a decrease in your tax bill of $35. So when you get your tax bill for a $200,000 home, now remember, I'm using 200,000 to compare and contrast so that we can, compare apples to apples. On the Outagamie side, you should see about a $30 decrease in a $200,000 home, and a $50 decrease on the Wapaka side of the city in your tax bill. And that's a $200,000 home. If you have a $100,000 home, cut it in half, and so forth and so on. Anyone has any questions on any of the tax information, please feel free to, have them call our office. They're wanting on hours, how they can pay, anything like that. We take those calls every day right now. We're extremely busy in our office with tax collection. We would be glad to help them or explain anything to them that they would like.
Thanks, Judy. And
You're welcome.
there was a sheet in there that the banks cannot or are not collecting tax payments, right?
That is correct. The bank decided with COVID that they didn't want the people into their lobbies. And once they stopped taking tax payments, I guess they didn't want to resume that, or because of COVID, they still do not want the amount of individuals within their lobbies. So yes, they have not continued to take tax payments. We are the only tax payment entity in the city anymore.
Then you guys set that up where people can pay online, but they should know that there's like a surcharge of, for processing fee or whatever.
Correct. And all of those processing fees are on the City of New London website, and it clearly indicates how much that you will be charged. Chad has it up right there. It clearly tells you on the website how much you will be charged. and I don't have that with me, but it's a percentage for a credit card. It's a flat fee for a debit card, and it's 50 cents if you take it out of your bank account. So if you think, if you're really not wanting to in-person pay and you have the money sitting in your bank account, you can go on the city's website and pay 50 cents to transfer those funds from your bank account, savings or checking account into the city's account. So those options are all available. Thank you. Mhm.
I'll bring it down in pennies.
Any other questions on that? All right, then I can go into my finance director's report. As most people are gearing down, as obviously we gear up in our office, and that includes all of our office here. So it also includes our Department of Public Works and our Parks Department. Everyone here is a team, and we work as a team, and they all chip in to help us get through this very busy time within our office, so that we can all have, try to work the lesser during the holiday season, I guess, as we can, or most efficiently as we can. So we are gearing up for that time of the year. And with this comes a lot of reporting that I have to do, both with Outagamie and Wapaka County, and then with the state of Wisconsin. So I spend a lot of time at the end of November and the beginning of December, fulfilling my obligation as a finance director here, calculating the levy for the city and getting that information in a timely manner over to the county, and then getting the information that we need to get into the state of Wisconsin so that we are not penalized for not submitting the information to them on time. So I had the levy limit worksheet that was due by the 15th of December that I have submitted, and then the statement of taxes for both Outagamie and Wapaka County that are due to the state by the 20th of December, I've already submitted. And then I submit those over to each of the counties so that they have that information also. And then also the TID information that was due to the state of Wisconsin by the 20th of December, I have submitted. I try to submit that right away with our levy because I use a lot of that information to set our levy for Outagamie County for our ER TID. Missy and I worked on the sick leave and the vacation payout. April and Missy completed the special assessments. That is also a big part of our tax roll. So we have to put tax payments that are due to the city on the tax roll. What we do is, so if we do, I'm trying to think of water lateral for a homeowner, when we go in and take care of a street, it allows them a little bit of flexibility and time to make those large payments. So we'll do a 10-year loan to them and allow those payments over time. And then we place them on their tax roll if they don't come in and pay their payment before the tax time. And people really like that option so that they can split, some of those bills are quite high, split those payments into 10 years. Makes it more easy for them to make those payments. And then I just talk about tax payments, payroll, financial reporting, gears up at this time of the year. It's the end of the year. So there's a lot of information that we have to fill out on both the human resource and payroll related items that need to get completed. W-2s, obviously, 1099s, all that kind of information. And we are on a January 31st deadline for all of those. So we'll be gearing up to get those done in January. The two investment grants were submitted to the state by the November 11th deadline. A lot of people also in our office involved in those two neighborhood investment grants. I'm really, really looking forward to hearing from them to see where we sit with those, and we'll definitely communicate that information once we find out within our office. I had a board meeting with our insurance company. We went through their annual budget, wow, and then approved the annual insurance policies for our insurance company. And the next one is probably have a little conversation about, I did some research on the transportation or utility funding that many of us have talked about, and we talked about in this committee. a number of times in the past as an option for possible revenue stream for our infrastructure. I can tell you that this is extremely controversial funding source. And the city has to hire somebody in order for us to place these dollars on the residential bills. The reason for that is because if, let's say, I was hoping we could do, like $35 on a resident and maybe 25 on a business, just for example purposes. But the problem with that is if a taxpayer comes into our office and said, I don't agree with this calculation because I only have this much of a driveway, or and my neighbor has 4 more feet than I have, then I have to explain to them why they pay the same bill as their neighbor pays, but they don't have, or I don't have as many cars as my neighbor has and I don't. So it has to be done in a very complex calculation way in order to make it justifiable to every taxpayer when they walk in the door and ask us, how did you come up with this? You have to come up with the calculation and it has to be based on something or another. So Chad and I have visited about this, and I did, I always tell them like this, I'm going to talk about this tonight. So we really believe that the best avenue for this is for us to set up a committee of you guys, and then whoever Chad would pick at City Hall to be part of that. And that we should take a really good look at this through the lens of more than Chad and myself and what you guys are thinking. So I think a subcommittee would be the best interest of the city of New London to move forward with something like this. And who knows what's going to happen with it? It could, could be a meeting and it's over. It could be, lots of meetings and move forward and where are we going? But I think it would be a really good exercise to take a look as ourselves, employees, and then you guys to take a look at how the successful ones had made it successful and what it's doing for them. And take a look at those that have failed and how come it failed. And so it's always great to look at both. And then see if you're willing as council members to move forward in something like this, because it is going to be a big change for the city. And so I just wanted to put that out there so everybody knew that I did spend some time looking at this, but I also feel that it's in the best interest of the city to take a look at it as a subcommittee and have a lot of people involved in that decision-making process before it even comes to finance as a decision to be made. Do you have anything to add to that, Chad?
I would say just, we'll put that on a future agenda item to see if the finance personnel committee develops that subcommittee and who's going to be on it and move forward. It's not like we got to do it tomorrow. but
No.
Future topic.
No.
We did talk about that. It's, something we probably should look into, just to look under every rock. I mean, like Judy said, could be one meeting, you guys decide, nope, it's not what we want to do, and we're done. But,
Yep.
We talked about revenue sources. We talked about the challenges of keeping up with street projects. We're not assessing, properties for street improvement projects. I think it's a good thing that you guys talk about it at least.
Yep.
I
Right.
think everybody should be careful. If we start taxing utilities, it's just going to be like the wheel tax. Once it goes into effect, it's never going to be reversed. So I guess I think it's nobody in town would care for their utilities to be taxed. I think it's a horrible idea.
And it's not that utilities tax, it's adding another fee onto the utility bill. So I mean, it would be another fee.
Correct.
Be just
It
like the wheel
becomes another
tax.
fee. All right, and then 10, Johnson and Black, who are our auditors, got a hold of me, and the city auditor contacted me, and the in-house audit will be Thursday, March 7th. So in between now and March 7th, we prepare a lot of financial information, and we actually send a lot of that to them in advance. So they're here one day, and the rest of it we do remotely. Last year they came in person, but I think it was the year before, it was a remote audit. I didn't really care for that too much. I certainly appreciate them coming in person and looking through things, and being hands-on. So I look forward to seeing them again. And then we continue to work on the TIDs. We have 4, 5, and 6 out there yet. So we continue to move forward on those. And I think that's all I have. Any questions of me? Any questions of any of the items that I have on that list?
Want to consider cancellation of the January 6th meeting?
As I looked forward, and a lot of times when I'm looking at my finance meetings from month to month, I'll look at the year before and the year before that, and am I missing something? Should I be talking about something? I never take lightly not having a finance committee meeting because we do not cancel them very often, as I'm sure John knows and Bob knows. It's just a meeting that it's extremely important for us to be taking a look at our financials. But things are really, really tight in our office right now with tax collection. We're down in an employee and filling in for payroll, and we have 3 payrolls this month, and I can't come up with an agenda item besides my financials at this point. So what I'm going to suggest is if something does come up between now and the next committee, we will have that committee meeting. If not, I would like to send you out the November financials, and just let you know that we won't be meeting unless you find that you want to have the meeting. I'm not going to have a problem with that. I just don't have any other line items at this time. I will get you the meeting packet. I will get it out before the end of the year. And I don't see anything on those financials that are going to be anything that I didn't talk about tonight. I expect our revenues to come to fruition for 2021. I expect us to be under in expenditure for 2021. But again, if it is something you're uncomfortable with and you say, no, I would rather have that meeting, and or you have a line item you'd like to discuss at that January meeting, we'll be glad to have it. It's just an option and a consideration at this time.
I think we'd have a meeting if something came up, but if nothing comes up, we don't really need to have it.
I just thought of our other agenda item that we talked about. We authorized the mayor to send that letter. More than likely, we're gonna get some type of amended agreement from the Department of Administration, closing out the park grant. If we don't have a meeting, do you guys have, it's basically just paperwork saying that we're gonna close out the park grant, which we talked about tonight. Would you guys be okay sending that directly to council for authorization? You guys want to have a finance personnel
We'll have
meeting,
to
say
have
go
a
ahead.
meeting just to tell you that you could send a letter that we already told you. you could send.
That would be costly to the city. I think
Approve that
we
much
should
before.
forward it right to
If
the
we get
mayor.
that letter in January, we'll put it right to council. then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do have one other item then. So I guess if we do end up canceling it, we talked about it. If we end up having it, we have it. How does that, so that it's not like, oh, I didn't know we were gonna have finance next month. I wonder why we're not gonna have finance. I just want you to, heads up that possibly we're not gonna have finance. And if you're extremely opposed to that, then we'll have finance. So, okay. Another something I wanted to bring up. Luke we approved the Volvo purchase for the streets department at the last capital projects meeting. And Luke and I have been in discussion about, and Chad knows about this purchase also, about a Volvo loader. And today's environment, it's extremely difficult to order a vehicle and get it next year, or get it in 6 months, or get it in 8 months. And he has a source, and it's actually a state quote. So it's called Sourcewell Contract Quote. And the state of Wisconsin has particular pieces of equipment where cities, villages, you have to be municipal to purchase these pieces of equipment. And he found one. And we can get delivery in August or September. And if he waits until January, so he would order this like ASAP, like in the next week. If we wait till January, he doesn't know, they airing told them they're not sure when he can get one. So it could be next year, it could be the year after. They have no idea. The price is 177 plus the 43, which is less actually than Aaron can get them the Volvo loader for. So I just want you to know, if you wonder how he ordered his piece of equipment in December versus January, that I told him that he should go ahead and order his piece of equipment. And we're gonna purchase it with designated funds, because that's the good part about the city having dollars in designated capital. So I'll pay for it, and we'll pay for it from designated funds in December, and then we'll reimburse it in January. So we're just gonna use designated funds instead of the actual budget, and then we'll push the money back in. So that way he can go ahead and purchase this piece of equipment. Also, he was going to do a trade-in, and the trade-in for the piece of equipment was, I lost my notes, oh no. Kind of feel out of my element talking about this stuff. 42.5 for ours, but they told him not to trade it in and sell it on his own, and he'll get more money for it. So with that being said, I'm switching gears here, so don't let me lose you. We will add 42.5 to the capital dollar amount that we had when we left capital. I'm kind of going back around to capital meeting. And then I'm going to be able to add almost $50,000 for the sale of the equipment from department. I think it was Department of Public Works, and they just did a big sale, and most of you should have got that email, or all of you should have got that email. So just with the sale of equipment in February, I'm going to be able to add $100,000 back to our capital equipment line item, so that we can utilize those dollars to purchase more of the equipment when we meet again in February. So just kind of heads you up so you know where these dollars are coming from when we come back and meet in February. I also anticipate that we're going to have some dollars left over in our current operational budget. So I'm hoping that capital list that we can get, purchase some more of those items that we couldn't do back in November when we first met.
You ever use Wisconsin surplus auction?
I don't
Use that with
know about these things. Chad?
I couldn't hear, what did you say?
the surplus, Wisconsin surplus auction.
That's all, we just sold a bunch of
That's what they
equipment
sell
on
it
that.
on.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All
And
right.
that's what we would sell that used Volvo on. or the
Okay.
used payload on.
And that's not unusual what you're talking about, Judy. We've done that a number of times.
Correct.
The police department does it all the time, so they get a
Yep.
discount on the vehicles and
Yep.
stuff. So this isn't something that's out of the ordinary. And I'm sure everybody does it.
Telling you, we do it quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that
You want to know what it is?
purchase of that loader through not airing,
It's through Sourcewell Contract Quote.
I assume that's, you're comparing same equipment for same equipment, correct?
Yep, it's a Volvo L70H. Doesn't mean anything to me, but probably does to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff with that.
Okay,
You can test drive it. Make sure it's okay.
you're welcome. And theirs was at 185. So 185 versus 177. That was the difference between this one and that one. And this one, he can't even tell us when, they have no clue when they're gonna see this one. At least we know this one we'll see next year. So I just didn't want you to hear, well, I heard we purchased a piece of equipment in December, and then you're like, what's going on? So I want you to know that, just keep the communication open, that we know what's going on. And again, finance committee meeting next month, that's gonna be entirely up to you guys. If something changes, Chad will let me know if we need to actually get that on the agenda, then that's what we'll do. We will do it and we will meet. But if you see something coming through that it's not going to happen, then you're not taken back by it.
I had one thing I mentioned to Chad and Judy about the bridge on on North Water Street. Now, with this infrastructure fund that's coming through the federal government, that's big in there is bridges. Now, I don't know, if it would pay for us to have the DOT. Maybe they inspect bridges.
We actually have that inspected by the county.
County does that.
Every other year or something. I get a report and I sent that to McMahon. There are some things that we need to do in the near future.
Yep.
And we've put that on our street plan.
Yeah.
But like you said, once we see the details on the infrastructure bill, that might be something we can apply for.
I mean, that's a critical bridge with the utilities being right across there.
Yep.
So I mean, I would think it would be it's not a heavily traveled road. I mean, there's enough traffic on it. But I mean, that might be something that we, put it into this, we might get the money for it, whether if we wait another year and all of a sudden next year, the DOT comes through and says, hey, this bridge got to get done now, then we're going to be on the hook for paying for it. And if we could be maybe a little retroactive in this, maybe we could get this bridge put on something with this.
Should be our money available for that part.
Right, and one of the things we have found out when we're applying for ARPA funding, if it isn't ready to rock and roll, sometimes but just knowing I didn't realize that the county actually came in and took a look at that. Just having that report in and of itself, when you're submitting for a grant, makes you more eligible than it would if you weren't doing those kinds of things moving forward and taking a look at your infrastructure.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that
Be this
infrastructure.
committee or Public Works, I don't know where. it
Yeah,
would
I
be,
think
but
you
it doesn't
guys
make
will
any
talk about it
difference.
at Public Works
Yeah.
probably.
And I haven't seen the details of the infrastructure.
No,
bill, so we gotta
I-
wait on that first.
Yeah.
Once we
Yeah.
see that.
So I don't know if they're just going to give like the ARPA funding we have now, 743,000. If they're gonna take that infrastructure money and just divvy it up, or if they're going to make you apply for it, or a hybrid like we are doing right now. So we received money plus we applied, and hopefully we'll receive some of that funding on the other end. So I won't know until, it actually comes out, but I think it's really important that we keep the bridges, because it is one of the things they mentioned when they came forth with this transportation funding was bridges, highways, and
That's all the infrastructure.
yep. Bridges and
I just
highways.
saw that on there and I thought, well, and I know that they had looked at that bridge, I don't know, it was a 3 years ago or something, and they said something about it, that it was not I mean, it's safe, but it was not in the best of shape or something. That's just what would made me.
There's some maintenance we gotta
No.
do to it. Right.
All right, that's all I had.
And that's our only city-owned bridge.
Bridge, yeah.
All the
Thank
other ones are
goodness.
county-owned.
Yes.
I need a motion to
Make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?